The first time I noticed something was wrong was during Sunday dinner. My mother-in-law, Paris, had just finished criticizing my pot roast when I caught my husband's reflection in the dining room mirror. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking through me, like I was already gone. My name is Celeste, and I'm a trauma therapist. I should have seen the signs earlier, but love has a way of blinding even the most trained eyes. The meat's overcooked, Paris announced, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. Caden, darling, remember how I used to make it for you? So tender it would fall off the bone? I watched my 6-year-old daughter Remington push her food around her plate. I like Mommy's cooking, she whispered. Of course you do, sweetheart. Paris reached across the table to pat her hand. But you're too young to know better. I gripped my fork tighter. Paris, please don't. Celeste, Caden cut in, his voice carrying that new edge I'd been hearing lately. Mom's just trying to help. Help with what? Undermining me in front of our daughter? Paris clicked her tongue. Dear, you're being paranoid again. Caden, have you noticed she's been more sensitive lately? The word paranoid hung in the air like smoke. I pushed back from the table. I need some air. Mommy? Remington's voice trembled. It's okay, baby. Finish your dinner. I'll be right back. I stepped onto our back porch, the summer air thick with humidity. Through the kitchen window, I could hear their muffled voices. I moved closer, not proud of eavesdropping, but driven by something I couldn't name. Getting worse, Paris was saying. The outbursts, the paranoia. I know, Mom. Caden's voice was heavy. The plan is in motion. We just need to be patient. And you're sure about this? What choice do we have? It's for Remington's sake. My hands started shaking. Plan? What plan? I pressed closer to the window, but they'd lowered their voices further. Later that night, after tucking Remington in, I found Caden in our bedroom, typing on his laptop. We need to talk, I said. He didn't look up. About? About whatever you and your mother are planning. His fingers stilled on the keyboard. What are you talking about? I heard you, through the window. You said something about a plan. Caden finally met my eyes, his expression concerned. Honey, we weren't talking about any plan. Are you feeling okay? Don't do that. Don't make me question what I heard with my own ears. He stood up, approaching me slowly like I was a spooked animal. This is exactly what Mom and I were worried about. These paranoid thoughts. Stop saying that word. Which word? Paranoid? Celeste, you're shouting. Was I? I hadn't realized. I lowered my voice. I know what I heard. You heard wrong. He placed his hands on my shoulders. Maybe you should call Dr. Martinez tomorrow. It's been a while since your last checkup. I don't need a checkup. I need my husband to be honest with me. I am being honest. His voice was gentle, reasonable, too reasonable. You're not well, Celeste. You haven't been for a while. I stepped back from his touch. I'm perfectly fine. Then why are you imagining conspiracies? Why are you attacking my mother? Why can't you see we're trying to help? Something cold settled in my stomach. I never said anything about conspiracies. A flash of something, frustration, worry, crossed his face before it smoothed back to concern. You should get some rest. We can talk more tomorrow. I lay awake that night, listening to Caden's steady breathing beside me. My mind kept replaying the conversation I'd overheard, his denial, the way Paris looked at me during dinner. Something was wrong. Very wrong. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Caden, which made no sense. He was right next to me, asleep. I opened it. Don't trust what you see. They're watching. I sat up, heart pounding. Caden? He stirred. What's wrong? I showed him my phone. Did you send this? He squinted at the screen. There's no text there, Celeste. The screen is blank. But I could see it clearly. Don't trust what you see. They're watching. It's right there, I insisted, my voice rising. How can you not see it? He sat up, fully awake now. I think we need to call Dr. Martinez right now. I looked back at my phone. The text was gone. No trace of it in my message history, but I had seen it. I know I had. Hadn't I? The emergency room's fluorescent lights made everything look harsh and unreal. I sat on the edge of an examination bed while a nurse named Sophia checked my vitals. "Blood pressure's a bit high," she said kindly, unwrapping the cuff from my arm. "But that's understandable given the circumstances." "I'm not crazy," I told her. The text was real. "Nobody's saying you're crazy." She smiled, and something about her gentle demeanor made me want to trust her. Sometimes stress can manifest in unexpected ways. Caden paced near the door, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, Mother. We're still waiting for the doctor." "No, she's not violent, just confused." "Of course you should bring Remington here. She needs her mother." I wanted to scream that I wasn't confused, but my protests were starting to sound hollow even to my own ears. The text had vanished. Just like the strange noises I'd been hearing at night, the shadows I'd seen moving in our hallway, and the mysterious notes I'd found in my office drawer warning me about Caden. Dr. Martinez arrived, looking concerned. "Celeste, Caden tells me you've been experiencing some disturbing symptoms." "They're not symptoms," I insisted. "Something's happening. Someone's trying to—" A commotion in the hallway cut me off. Paris burst in with Remington, who ran straight to me. "Mommy, Grandma says you're sick." I hugged her tight. "I'm fine, baby. Everything's fine." "Remington, darling," Paris cooed. "Why don't you come sit with Grandma while the doctor talks to Mommy?" "No!" I held my daughter tighter. "She stays with me." Dr. Martinez cleared his throat. "Perhaps it would be better if we could speak privately." Sophia stepped forward. "I can take her to the children's area. We have coloring books." Remington's face lit up. "Can I, Mommy?" I reluctantly let her go, watching as Sophia led her away. The nurse turned back briefly, giving me a reassuring nod. "Now," Dr. Martinez said, "tell me about these messages you've been receiving." "They're warnings," I explained, "about Caden and Paris, but every time I try to show someone, they disappear." "And the shadows in your hallway?" "They're real. I recorded them on my phone, but the video was corrupted," Caden finished. "Just like the last 3 times." Dr. Martinez made notes on his tablet. "And how long has this been going on?" "About 2 weeks," I said. "Ever since I overheard—" A crash from the hallway interrupted me. I jumped up and ran to the door, but there was nothing there. No broken glass, no fallen equipment, just empty corridor. "I heard it!" I spun around. "You all must have heard it!" Paris pressed a hand to her chest. "Darling, there was no crash." "Stop it! Stop making me question everything!" I grabbed Caden's arm. "You know something's wrong. Tell them about the plan you discussed with your mother." "Celeste," he said softly, "we're worried about you. These delusions—" "They're not delusions." My shout echoed through the room. Dr. Martinez exchanged glances with Caden, who nodded grimly. "I think," the doctor said, "we need to consider immediate intervention." "What does that mean?" But I knew. God help me, I knew. "There's a bed available in our psychiatric ward, just for a few days, to help you stabilize." "No." I backed away. "No, you can't do this, Caden, please." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's for the best, honey. For you and for Remington." "Remington—" I looked around wildly. "Where is she? I need to see her." Paris stepped between me and the door. "She's safe with the nurse. You're in no condition." "Get out of my way!" I tried to push past her, but hands grabbed me from behind. Hospital security, summoned by some silent signal. "This is for your own good," Paris said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You'll thank us later." I fought against the hands holding me. "Caden, don't let them do this!" He stood there, face twisted with what looked like genuine anguish. "I'm sorry, Celeste. I love you, but you need help." "No, I need my daughter! Remington! Remington!" A sharp prick in my arm, and the world started to blur. The last thing I saw was Sophia in the doorway, holding my crying daughter, her face filled with something that looked less like professional concern and more like real worry. Then darkness took me, and with it, my last chance to protect my little girl from whatever they had planned. The psychiatric ward was quieter than I expected. No screaming, no chaos. Just the soft squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum and the distant hum of fluorescent lights. I'd been here 3 days when I met Louisa. She sat next to me during group therapy, her silver hair neatly styled, despite being in a hospital gown like the rest of us. While others shared their stories, she studied me with sharp blue eyes. "You don't belong here," she whispered when the therapist wasn't looking. I turned to her, startled. "What?" "Your eyes, they're too clear, too focused." She patted my hand. "Come sit with me at lunch." Later in the cafeteria, Sophia appeared with our trays. She'd transferred to the psychiatric ward the same day I was admitted, a coincidence that felt less random by the minute. "How are you holding up?" she asked, lingering at our table longer than necessary. "Have you seen my daughter? Is she okay?" Sophia glanced around before lowering her voice. "She asks about you every time they visit. She misses you." "They're still letting him have custody?" Louisa interrupted, her voice sharp. "Who are you?" I asked. "Really?" Louisa stirred her soup. "Former family court judge, retired last year. Then my son decided I was unstable after I questioned his wife's drinking habits around my grandchildren." She smiled grimly. "Amazing how quickly they can make you disappear when they want to." My hands started shaking. "They're going to take her from me permanently, aren't they?" "Not if we can help it," Sophia said, then quickly moved away as another nurse approached. Louisa waited until we were alone again. "Tell me everything. Start with when you first suspected something was wrong." I did. The overheard conversation, the vanishing messages, the gaslighting. With each detail, Louisa's frown deepened. "Classic isolation tactics," she said. "They're building a case against you. Every time you react to their manipulations, you look more unstable." "But how? Caden's a lawyer, not a—" "A lawyer?" Louisa leaned forward. "What kind?" "Family law. He specializes in custody cases." "Of course he does." She shook her head. "He knows exactly how to work the system." A commotion near the nurse's station caught our attention. A patient was arguing about phone privileges. In the chaos, Sophia appeared again, pressing something into my hand as she passed. "Computer room. 10 minutes," she whispered. I looked down. A small piece of paper with login credentials. The computer room was monitored, but not heavily supervised. When my scheduled time came, I sat at the furthest terminal and logged into my cloud account, using the credentials Sophia had given me. "What are we looking for?" Louisa asked, pretending to read a magazine nearby. "Anything, everything." My fingers flew over the keyboard. Emails, photos, voice messages. I stopped. There, in my archived voicemails, was a folder I didn't recognize. Inside were dozens of recordings from the past 6 months. "Headphones," Louisa hissed, sliding a pair across the desk. I plugged them in and clicked play. "Caden, baby, when are you going to tell her?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Your mother says everything's ready." Next message. "The papers are filed. Once she's committed, custody will be automatic. Paris has the judge in her pocket." Message after message, each one more damning than the last. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely operate the mouse. "Save them," Louisa urged. "Quick, before—" "Time's up," the computer room supervisor called out. "Everyone out." I frantically forwarded the messages to an email address I'd memorized years ago. My best friend Hannah, a lawyer who'd helped with my custody agreements before. That night, I lay in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling while other patients slept. Sophia appeared during her rounds. "Did you find what you needed?" she whispered. "Why are you helping me?" She hesitated. "Because 6 months ago, my sister lost her kids the same way. Different players, same game." She squeezed my hand. "Some of us are still fighting for her. I need to get out of here." "You will, but you have to be smart, play their game, take your meds, go to therapy, act compliant. The more stable you appear, the harder it'll be for them to keep you here." "While they're out there with my daughter?" "Trust me," Louisa's voice came from the next bed. "The quieter you are, the louder those voicemails will speak." A door opened down the hall. Sophia quickly moved on, maintaining her rounds. "Louisa?" I whispered into the darkness. "Yes?" "Thank you, both of you." Don't thank us yet. Her voice was steel in the darkness. Thank us when you're holding your daughter again. Now rest. Tomorrow, we start planning your resurrection. I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. Behind my eyelids, I could see it all playing out. The courtroom, the evidence, the look on Caden's face when he realized his own game had been turned against him. Soon, I promised myself. Soon. Back in the computer room, I dug deeper into the voicemails. Each one felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but I couldn't stop listening. Caden, I miss you, a woman purred. Paris says we can go public once everything's finalized. I recognized the voice now. Michaela, a legal assistant from Caden's firm. The pieces were falling into place. Found something interesting? Louisa appeared behind me, right as a new message started playing. Mother, I can't do this anymore, Caden's voice cracked through the speakers. The way Celeste looks at me, she trusts me completely. Don't go soft now, Paris snapped. Remember what's at stake. The firm's reputation, our family's future. That woman is poison, just like your father said about me before I dealt with him. I yanked the headphones off. Did she just... Keep listening, Louisa urged, and keep forwarding everything to Hannah. The next message made my blood run cold. The offshore accounts are ready, Paris said. Once we have custody of Remington, we'll transfer everything. The girls' trust fund, the firm's assets. Celeste won't be able to touch any of it from the institution. My hands shook as I typed a quick email to Hannah. Financial fraud. Check Paris's accounts. Something about Caden's father. Careful, Sophia appeared, pretending to check the computers. Dr. Martinez is doing rounds early today. I clicked through more files frantically. Photos appeared. Caden and Michaela together at a hotel. Date stamps from months ago. Paris at a bank I didn't recognize, carrying documents. A statement showing millions in transfers to a Cayman Islands account. Oh God, I whispered. They're not just taking Remington. They're stealing everything. Download it all, Louisa said. Every last... My elbow hit the mouse. A window popped up. Email sent successfully to Caden Wilkinson. My heart stopped. No. What happened? Sophia rushed over. I accidentally... The evidence. I sent it to him. All of it? Just the photos, but he'll know now. He'll know I found out. Sophia grabbed my arm. We need to get you out of here. Today. How? Leave that to me, Louisa said. But first, forward everything else to Hannah. Now. My fingers flew over the keyboard, sending file after file. Behind us, voices approached the computer room. Dr. Martinez is coming, Sophia warned. Act normal. I quickly closed everything and opened a generic wellness website just as the doctor entered. Celeste, he smiled. How are you feeling today? Much better. I forced myself to smile back. The medications are really helping. Excellent. Your husband called this morning. He's very concerned about you. My stomach churned. Is he coming to visit? This afternoon, actually. He has some papers for you to sign. Papers. Of course. After Dr. Martinez left, Sophia pulled me aside. Don't sign anything, no matter what they say. They'll force me to. No, Louisa joined us. They won't, because in exactly 2 hours, you're having a medical emergency. Sophia nodded. Food allergy. Very unfortunate. We'll have to transfer you to the main hospital for treatment. But I don't have any food allergies. Louisa pressed something into my hand. You do today. Sophia knows the signs to look for. Once you're in the ER, Hannah will be waiting. I looked at the small pill in my palm. Will this hurt me? Just some very convincing hives and swelling, Sophia assured me. Nothing dangerous. I'll be with you the whole time. Why are you risking your job for me? Because I took an oath to help people, she said fiercely. Not to help imprison them. A commotion erupted in the hallway. Through the window, I saw Caden striding toward the nurse's station, hours ahead of schedule. Paris was with him. He knows, I whispered. He got the email. Now or never, Louisa said. Take the pill. I stared at Caden through the window. His face was twisted with anger as he argued with the staff. Paris stood behind him, her expression calculating as she surveyed the ward. For a moment, I remembered how it felt to love him, to trust him, to believe we'd grow old together, watching Remington grow up. Then I thought of the voicemails, the photos, the offshore accounts. I swallowed the pill. How long? I asked. 10 minutes, Sophia said. When it hits, make it dramatic. I watched Caden getting closer to the computer room, his eyes scanning for me. Louisa, I whispered. If anything happens. Nothing will happen, she squeezed my hand. Except justice. I felt the first tingles of the pill taking effect just as Caden reached for the door handle. Game on. The emergency room lights were just as harsh as I remembered. My face was still swollen, but the worst of the allergic reaction had passed. Sophia had played her part perfectly, ensuring I was transferred before Caden could get to me. Your friend Hannah is on her way, she whispered, adjusting my IV. Just keep stalling. The curtain yanked open. Caden stood there, his tie loosened and hair disheveled. Leave us, he told Sophia. Hospital policy requires, leave us. Sophia glanced at me. I nodded slightly and she stepped out, but I knew she wouldn't go far. What did you find? Caden's voice was low, dangerous. Everything. He ran his hands through his hair. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you're having an affair with Michaela while your mother embezzles millions. His face went white. You don't understand? Then explain it to me. I sat up, ignoring the dizziness. Explain why my husband is trying to lock me away and steal my daughter. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From her. He collapsed into the chair beside my bed. From my mother. From what she's capable of. I stared at him. What are you talking about? My father. His voice cracked. She didn't just deal with him. She killed him. The monitor beside me beeped faster. What? Insurance money. Just like now with the firm's accounts. She's been planning this for years. When you started asking questions about the family finances, so you decided to help her commit me? To protect me? You don't know what she threatened to do. He grabbed my hand. I yanked it away. To you, to Remington. Don't you dare say her name. Celeste, please. The affair with Michaela. It was my mother's idea. To build the case against you. I never wanted... But you did it anyway. My voice was ice. You chose her over us. I chose survival. You think I wanted any of this? The photos, the fake messages, the gaslighting? The messages weren't fake? He froze. What messages? The ones in my cloud account, the voicemails. His face changed. What voicemails? The curtain moved. Paris stood there, her expression murderous. You stupid boy, she spat. You've said too much. Mother, be quiet, she turned to me. Where are the recordings? Safe, I said, like I should have kept my family. Your family? She laughed. You were never family, just a means to an end. The firm needed Remington's trust fund to cover the losses, and you were in the way. Mother, stop. Caden stood up. Why? She knows everything now, thanks to your weakness. She pulled something from her purse, a syringe. Unfortunately, allergic reactions can be so unpredictable. Security! Sophia's voice rang out. Code Gray! Everything happened at once. Paris lunged forward. Caden grabbed her arm. The syringe went flying. Security officers flooded the room. She tried to kill me! Paris screamed, pointing at me. She's delusional! Violent! Nice try, Hannah's voice cut through the chaos. She stood in the doorway, holding up her phone. But I just recorded everything you said, about the trust fund, the firm's losses, and what really happened to your husband. Paris went still. You have no proof. Actually, I said, we have every proof. The voicemails, the financial records, the offshore accounts. It's all with the FBI now. You're bluffing. Am I? I looked at Caden. Tell her. Tell her what happens when you cross a trauma therapist who specializes in gathering and documenting evidence. Caden's shoulders slumped. It's over, Mother. Paris lunged for the door, but security was faster. As they led her away, her screams echoed down the hallway. Caden, I said quietly, Get out. Celeste, get out. Hannah has the divorce papers ready, along with a restraining order. What about Remington? You lost the right to ask about her the moment you chose your mother over her safety. He stood there, broken and defeated. I did love you, both of you. Love without protection is just another word for betrayal. After he left, Hannah sat beside me. You okay? No. I looked at Sophia, who was checking my vitals again. But I will be. Where's my daughter? Safe with my sister, Sophia said. Ready to see her mom. And Paris? Hannah smiled grimly. Won't be seeing anyone for a very long time. The FBI is very interested in what happened to her husband. I closed my eyes, exhausted but relieved. I want to go home. Soon, Sophia promised. But first, there's someone else who wants to see you. Louisa appeared, looking elegant even in her hospital gown. Ready to get our lives back? I nodded, thinking of Remington's smile, of home, of freedom. More than ready. The police station's interview room was cold, but I barely noticed. Detective Morris slid another photo across the table. Paris, 20 years younger, standing next to her husband. Tell me again what made you suspicious, she said. The voicemail. She mentioned dealing with Caden's father the same way she planned to deal with me. Hannah squeezed my hand under the table as Morris played the recording. Paris's voice filled the room. The firm's reputation, our family's future, that woman is poison, just like your father said about me before I dealt with him. We've reopened the investigation into Robert Wilkinson's death, Morris said. The accident never sat right with the department. Did Caden know? I asked. About his father? We're still questioning him, but this morning we found something interesting. She produced another photo. Recognize this? It showed a young woman, maybe 20, with familiar features. She looks like Paris. Her sister, Margaret, disappeared 30 years ago after threatening to expose Paris's first financial scheme. My stomach churned. First? Paris has a pattern. Marriage, embezzlement, convenient accidents. Your husband wasn't just protecting you from threats. He was protecting you from history repeating itself. That doesn't excuse what he did. No, Morris agreed, but it might help explain it. After the interview, Hannah drove me to her office. Louisa was waiting, now dressed in a sharp business suit. The judge granted your emergency custody order, she announced. Remington stays with you. What about Caden? Supervised visitation only, after psychiatric evaluation. She paused. He's cooperating fully with the investigation. He's trying to save himself, I said bitterly. Maybe. Louisa sat beside me. Or maybe he's finally choosing the right side. Too late. Is it? She pulled out a folder. These are Paris's psychiatric records from 1985. Her first hospitalization was after her father died. Another convenient accident. I opened the folder. Reports of abuse, trauma, diagnosed personality disorders, a cycle of violence spanning generations. She was a victim once too, Louisa said softly. Don't. I closed the folder. Don't make me feel sorry for her. Understanding isn't the same as forgiving. Hannah's phone buzzed. Sophia's here with Remington. My heart leaped. Moments later, my daughter burst through the door. Mommy! I caught her in my arms, breathing in her familiar scent. Baby, I missed you so much. Are you better now? Daddy said you were sick. I was never sick, sweetheart, but everything's okay now. She pulled back, her small face serious. Is Grandma in trouble? Daddy was crying about her. My throat tightened. Yes, she is. And Daddy made some mistakes. Is he in trouble too? That's complicated. Like when I broke your necklace and felt bad but couldn't fix it? I almost laughed at her simple wisdom. Something like that? Sophia cleared her throat. Remington, why don't we get some hot chocolate while your mom talks to her friends? After they left, I slumped in my chair. How do I explain any of this to her? With time, Louisa said, and truth. She's stronger than you think. Like her mother, Hannah added. My phone lit up with a text from Caden. I know sorry isn't enough, but I'm telling them everything. About mother, about father, about Margaret. Whatever happens to me, Remington deserves the truth. He's right about that much, Louisa said, reading over my shoulder. Truth is the first step toward healing. I don't want to heal with him. No, but maybe you need to heal for yourself, for Remington. I thought about Paris's psychiatric records, about cycles of abuse and trauma, passing from parent to child like a toxic inheritance. How do I break the cycle? I whispered. You already have, Louisa said firmly. By fighting back, by choosing truth over fear. Hannah nodded. And by showing Remington that love doesn't mean accepting abuse. Through the office window, I could see my daughter in the break room, laughing as Sophia helped her add marshmallows to her hot chocolate. She was safe. She was loved. She would grow up knowing the difference between protection and control. I want to see those records again, I said. All of them, Paris's history, the previous cases, everything. Why? Hannah asked. Because understanding isn't the same as forgiving. I met Louisa's knowing gaze. But maybe it's the first step toward making sure this never happens again. She smiled. Now that sounds like the trauma therapist I met in the ward. No, I said, watching Remington's carefree smile. That sounds like a mother who's ready to turn poison into medicine. The courtroom felt smaller than I remembered. I smoothed my skirt, fighting the urge to look back at Remington, who sat with Sophia in the gallery. Today would determine everything. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Reynolds entered, her expression unreadable. I'd been before her dozens of times as an expert witness in trauma cases. Now I was the one being judged. Be seated, she said. Let's begin with the custody petition. Hannah stood. Your Honor, we have extensive evidence of the conspiracy against my client, including financial records, recorded conversations, and witness testimony. Objection, Caden's lawyer interrupted. My client has already admitted his role and is cooperating with authorities. This hearing is about the child's best interests. Agreed, Reynolds said. Ms. Hannah, proceed with custody arguments only. The next hour was a blur of testimonies. Sophia described my interactions with Remington during supervised visits. Louisa spoke about her observations of my mental state and stability. Detective Morris confirmed that I had been the victim, not the perpetrator, of a complex scheme. Then Caden took the stand. I failed as a husband and father, he said, his voice rough. I chose fear over love, compliance over courage. But please, don't take my daughter away completely. You helped commit her mother to a psychiatric facility under false pretenses, Hannah reminded him. How can she ever trust you with their child? I can't undo what I did. He looked directly at me. But I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not the kind my mother... He swallowed hard. I'm learning about generational trauma, about the patterns I repeated. I want to break that cycle for Remington. By testifying against your mother? Hannah pressed. Yes. By telling the truth, finally. About Father's death, about Aunt Margaret, about everything. Judge Reynolds leaned forward. Mr. Caden, are you saying you knew about these crimes before? I suspected, but I was a child when Father died. Mother convinced me it was an accident, that everyone was against us, that we had to protect each other. His voice cracked. I became what she made me. That's not an excuse, I said, unable to stay silent. No, he agreed. It's not. But it's why I'm asking for a chance to be better, to show Remington that people can change, that mistakes can be admitted, that truth matters more than pride. The judge turned to me. Ms. Celeste, you've requested sole custody with no visitation. I stood, my legs shaking. Yes, Your Honor, initially. Initially? I took a deep breath. As a trauma therapist, I've seen what happens when children are cut off from parents who are genuinely trying to change. It can create new wounds while trying to heal old ones. Caden's head snapped up. I'm not saying I forgive him, I continued, but Remington loves her father. If he's serious about therapy, about breaking the cycle, I'm willing to consider supervised visitation, eventually. Objection, his lawyer stood. We're requesting joint custody. Overruled, Reynolds cut in. Continue, Ms. Celeste. My daughter deserves to see that accountability matters. That change is possible, but she also deserves to feel completely safe. I turned to Caden. Prove you can be trusted. Not to me, to her. Judge Reynolds nodded slowly. I've reviewed all the evidence, including the pending criminal charges against Paris and the FBI's ongoing investigation. My ruling is as follows. The courtroom held its breath. Sole physical and legal custody is granted to Celeste. Mr. Caden will have supervised visitation twice monthly, contingent upon continuing therapy and compliance with all criminal proceedings. After 6 months, the court will review this arrangement based on progress reports from all parties. I sagged in relief as she continued. Furthermore, Mr. Caden will maintain his cooperation with authorities regarding Paris's crimes. Any contact with his mother will result in immediate termination of visitation rights. Thank you, Your Honor, Caden said quietly. Don't thank me, she replied. Thank your wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, for understanding that healing is more complicated than punishment. After the ruling, I found Remington in the hallway with Sophia. Is Daddy still my daddy? She asked. I knelt before her. Yes, baby. You'll see him sometimes with Ms. Sophia there to help. Because he made bad choices? Yes, but he's trying to make better ones now. She considered this with 6-year-old gravity. Like when I learned from my mistakes? Exactly like that. Caden approached cautiously. Can I say goodbye? I nodded, stepping back as he hugged our daughter. I love you, Remington, he whispered. I'm going to work very hard to be a better daddy. Promise? I promise, and no more lies, ever. She hugged him back. Okay. Later, Hannah found me in her office, staring at Paris's file. Second thoughts? No. I closed the folder. Just thinking about cycles, how they end. They end with choice, Louisa said from the doorway. You chose truth. Caden chose accountability. Even Remington is choosing forgiveness, in her own way. And Paris? She chose to stay trapped. That's on her, not you. I nodded, gathering my things. My daughter was waiting. It was time to go home and start our new chapter. The autumn breeze rustled through the therapy garden as I watched Remington plant bulbs with Sophia. Each one represented a session, a small piece of healing buried deep to bloom later. Yellow ones are for happy days, Remington explained to her father, who sat on a nearby bench. Purple are for sad days. When they all grow, it'll be a feelings garden. Caden nodded, his supervised visit almost over. That's beautiful, sweetheart, just like you. Ms. Sophia says flowers don't rush. They grow when they're ready. I smiled, remembering when Sophia suggested this project. She'd left the hospital to start a family therapy practice, focusing on children affected by domestic manipulation. Remington was her first success story. Time to wrap up, Sophia called gently. Remington hugged her father goodbye. As she skipped inside to wash her hands, Caden approached me. The FBI finished questioning Mother today, he said. And? They found Margaret's remains, where Mother said they would. He rubbed his face. The prosecutor's offering a deal in exchange for her confession to Father's murder. Will she take it? She already did, along with a full psychiatric evaluation. I absorbed this, thinking of the cycles we'd broken, the truths we'd unearthed. Good. Celeste? His voice was hesitant. Thank you for not keeping Remington from me completely, for giving me a chance to change. I didn't do it for you. I know. That's why it means so much. The door opened and Louisa emerged, elegant as ever in her judge's robes. She'd been reinstated after her son's scheme was exposed, and now specialized in family court cases involving psychological manipulation. The garden's coming along nicely, she observed. Purple and yellow, I said, sad and happy. Just like life should be. Real, not perfect. Hannah's car pulled up to the curb. She'd been handling the final dissolution of the firm's assets, ensuring everything was properly restored to its rightful owners. The trust fund's secure, she announced, joining us, and I brought something else. She handed me an envelope. Your reinstatement papers. The medical board cleared everything. I touched the envelope. thinking of my trauma therapy practice, of all the people I could help now with my newfound understanding. Will you see clients here? Caden asked. In the garden? Some. Sophia and I are starting a support group for families affected by generational abuse. The garden will be part of their healing space. Like my feelings flowers, Remington returned, hands clean and damp. Exactly like that, baby. Caden checked his watch. I should go. My therapy appointment. Dad? Remington tugged his sleeve. Will you help plant more bulbs next time? He looked at me questioningly. I nodded. As long as you keep doing the work, I said. I will, I promise. After he left, Remington helped me gather the gardening tools. Mommy, are you still sad about Daddy's bad choices? Sometimes, but I'm proud of his good choices now. Like telling the truth about Grandma? Yes, and like getting help to be better. She considered this, her face serious. Can we plant some orange bulbs next time? What do orange ones mean? Ms. Sophia says orange is for brave days, when we do hard things that help us grow. Louisa chuckled. Smart woman, that's Sophia. Orange it is, I agreed. We'll plant them together. Hannah helped Remington carry the tools inside while Louisa lingered in the garden. You know, she said, when I met you in that ward, I never imagined we'd end up here. Running a therapy garden? Building something beautiful from something broken? Inside, I could hear Remington laughing with Sophia, probably planning their next session. Hannah was on the phone, likely handling the last details of Paris's case. Everything was different now, but somehow more real than before. The flowers will bloom in spring, I said. Yes. Louisa squeezed my hand. And so will you. I looked at the freshly turned earth, the tiny markers showing where each bulb waited beneath the surface. Yellow for joy, purple for sorrow, orange for courage. A garden of truth, growing one day at a time. Come on, I said. Let's go see what other colors we can add. We walked inside together, leaving the autumn breeze to whisper through the garden. Somewhere beneath the soil, roots were already reaching out, growing stronger, preparing to break through to the light. Just like us. Just like love, just like truth.